Welcome to Salve, a therapeutic podcast for digital ailments. We're here to ease your online aches and entrepreneurial anxieties, one session at a time, with our host Jordan Brannon and today's guest Robert Rand from iPass.com. Today's worrying condition, the intense burning sensation that comes from poorly integrated software.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coalition's Cyber Salve podcast. I'm Jordan Brannon, co-founder and current CEO at Coalition Technologies, one of the leading family-owned digital agencies. We decided to launch Cyber Salve this year to help you understand the pain points that you're experiencing as a digital business and also find solutions for them. So today we're really excited to bring in one of our wonderful partners and to talk about a couple of pain points that you may be experiencing. And I'm going to turn over the microphone to him for his introduction, and then we'll jump into our discussion today around your pain points. Robert, why don't you give us a quick intro to yourself and also the company that you're with?
Absolutely. Jordan, thanks for having me. I love getting to partner with the team at Coalition Technologies. I'm Robert Rand. I'm the Chief Partnership Officer at iPass.com. iPass stands for Integration Platform as a Service. And so our company really makes it faster and easier and much more maintainable and predictable to get data flowing between your entire tech stack, especially for merchants that are selling in different places in different ways, that you've got your accounting team in an ERP, you've got your sales team in a CRM, you're selling things maybe in retail brick and mortar stores, you're selling things wholesale, shipping out of warehouses and such, and there just winds up being all this product data, order data, customer data that different people, different teams within an organization need to access. And if you want to have best-in-class products that allow you to excel at all of those different business operations, at selling and fulfilling and all these different things, then you really have to pay attention to how that data is coming together. And not only maybe, how it happens on a good day, but also what happens if something fails, what happens if some data gets stuck. And that's where iPass.com comes in.
Awesome. Well, we're really happy to have you here with us. I think this is one of those big pain points that even as a small, digitally focused, digitally enabled e-commerce business, you're going to encounter. Our backstory, how we kind of landed at Coalition, was that classic trying to get into a better dorm room in college story. Joel had begun a drop shipping business in the early 2000s out of our shared dorm room, and then ultimately that became the onus for Coalition. But even as a small business run by two college kids, pretty simple operation, we just started to see data breakdown happening, and it really became a challenge for us. Doing at the time, we were running something, I think, close to $50,000 annually in our first year, so very small. But we started to see this sort of disconnect that was happening, and we were trying to manage that with Gmail largely. Actually, we were just trying to get an email out to somebody to make sure things were going. Can you maybe help us sort of give a lay of the land? What are some of the biggest pain points that brands are going to experience? When do they start to show up, and how are they measured? What's the way that a pain point might be quantified in your particular area and category?
So it is interesting that there are a lot of different metrics that merchants want to be looking at when they're thinking about integrations and what's helping, what's hurting. And so you can think about, for instance, I was meeting with a retailer recently where they're still printing out orders and manually keying those in the point of sale where they're managing inventory and so forth in order to then ship those orders out. And we run into these sorts of things regularly where you can start to quantify, well, if that's an order a day, maybe no big deal. But, if you're doing that for 100 orders a day, you can calculate how many minutes you're spending and the cost. And we also really like to think about opportunity cost. So not only what could that employee have been doing that would have generated more money for the company if this was all automated, but also where there are those opportunities to delight shoppers, to make to meet the shopper where the shopper wants to be met. So as an example, if I'm thinking back to that retail situation, that it's often the case that you'll see maybe a superficial, or maybe that's a strong word, or maybe a light integration between an e-commerce website and a point of sale. And we like to think about it more comprehensively, that gift cards should work online and in-store across the board, that loyalty points should be, redeemed and earned in-store and online seamlessly. For the shopper, and this is kind of where, the big companies that we all run into every day set the standard that I like to talk about table stakes. And so, the shopper is used to what Walmart or Target or Amazon puts in front of them. Amazon taught everybody that shipping should be nearly instantaneous and free. It doesn't make it easy on the rest of us trying to solve those problems without quite their heft. But it still, leaves that opportunity to say, how do we solve those challenges? And so, again, thinking back to integrations, how do we get that order to the right warehouse or the right store so that it can be delivered faster? And how do we get that order there instantly so that there's no delay in that process, and so on and so forth? So it goes back to not only cost savings in terms of optimizing your business, but also being able to earn that customer's repeat business and their positive feedback and all those positive attributes that you're hoping for.
Yeah. And I think on the agency side, we're best known for our work in digital marketing for those e-commerce brands. One of the places where I see this sort of lack of integration really hurting us is in sort of our shopping feed driven marketing ecosystem. And I think with AI going the direction that it is, I think that's going to be an even bigger deal. If you're not getting the accurate data out to your storefront and thus to whatever channels are consuming that data, you're really going to be in the weeds when someone's on ChatGPT and is trying to find out whether or not your retail brand has inventory at a location near them. And I think that really is an interesting spot of evolution with the AI piece. But today, for us, when we're running Google ads or Meta ads, and I've got a key product on a key selling weekend, we've got, Prime Day running right now. We're running off Amazon sales. And we see something go out of stock, and it can take a couple hours before that gets triggered in the system. We see the revenue drop. That sort of integration becomes really helpful. Thinking about a typical iPass.com client, where in their experience do they experience the most pain, where they really start to think about evolving beyond that manual entry process or beyond some primitive data flow, like I've been keying it into a Google Sheet, and then every day at the end of the day, I bulk import that sheet into 3 different systems? What sort of is the trigger in pain where they start to say, I've got to automate this. I need to find a more reliable way of connecting the dots here?
I think that, what we typically see most often, you're seeing a merchant who's growing their tech stack, who's adding new software, who's going from QuickBooks to, you name it, right? To Acumatica or NetSuite or Microsoft Dynamics 365 or a more robust package. If they're manufacturing and distributing, maybe it's more like an Epicor P21 or a SysPro, but they're in that motion of saying, we're now going to better manage our business processes, and now they have that opportunity to get these things communicating well. And I think, Jordan, you hit on something important about thinking about the sources and destinations of the data and where you really want it and need it. And you start to see that escalation, that only grows. What we typically see as a platform are merchants that basically have burned out of trying to do it the old-fashioned way. That when you think about e-commerce, when I first got into the e-commerce space, and you'll probably appreciate this from your life experience, there were still a lot of people custom writing integration, custom writing integrations to go with custom e-commerce platforms.
Yep.
They were writing everything custom. Like there wasn't, Shopify did not win the market yet, and so on and so forth.
And we didn't have vibe
with
coding either. I want to give us our credit and our stripes, right? When we were building some of those early integrations, because we did that, right? That was actually a part of our evolution. We didn't have a cursor to do a lot of the work for us.
Right. And so then the next logical stage was that, okay, now you have your e-commerce platform as a standard, and you can choose one of many great platforms, and I can rattle off lots of them.
Yep.
And you're going to want that to work with, various other, again, software that you're going to utilize. And so people were custom integrating, and then they went to integration platforms that were really containers or vessels for custom integrations.
Mm-hmm.
They gave you some kind of a methodology, but it was really still custom. And so it was a lot of work, a lot of maintenance, a lot of management, a big ongoing burden, and people would kind of, burn out of trying to get these things all connected. And it was really the challenge of getting data from A to B, from system 1 to system 2. And then before you know it, you're trying to deal with systems 3, 4, and 5,
yep.
and you're replacing system 1, and it's a never-ending process of burning through this. And so where our team really found strength coming out of that experience was creating an integrations hub, a universal platform that would unify data, and that would allow for that one-to-many experience. And so we might see an e-commerce order come down to iPass.com, it gets normalized, it gets standardized, and then it can go to the CRM. So the sales team has visibility, the accounting and ERP suite. For the finance team, it can go to a shipping or fulfillment system. It can, on and on and on, that you're not limited. And we find the same in terms of when I think of, I'd call it data orchestration. So you might have, for instance, some of that product data, maybe the inventory and the pricing are going to come out of that ERP, that's the source of truth. But maybe the product descriptions and these tags for systems like Amazon and eBay and TikTok and what have you, that doesn't really fit well in the ERP. That needs its own place to live. And next thing you know, you're running a product information management system, something like BIMcore or Kenio or one of these systems. And so that's where, now you've got, just to have one product published out there in a sales channel like an e-commerce site or an online marketplace, you have data coming from multiple places. And being able to organize that and stitch that together becomes very, very important. And so I think that, all of this is really about economies of scale. And then having a system where you can see all of these data flows, you can adjust them in a low-code way, you can see all the errors and exceptions. Data is data. Every now and then somebody makes a mistake, puts a question mark in a number field, or a system gets stuck somewhere that it's being upgraded and it's unavailable, and you can't just lose orders. And traditionally, a lot of connectors, that's what would happen. That maybe there's a log file on a server somewhere that nobody's monitoring. The merchant only finds out when the shoppers are calling up saying, where's my stuff? Where's my order? And so really, having something that's proactive becomes extremely important for scaling. Having something where it's hub and spoke and you're upgrading your ERP, great. Hook up the new ERP, turn off the old ERP integration when you're ready, but the e-com and all the other systems stay the same. Having a more modular way of doing it becomes really, really important. So I'd say that there's I could go on a lot more tangents on that, but there are all of these different needs within the organization, and it really all comes down to, in today's market, being able to be nimble, be flexible, and have your own business processes, have your own requirements, not necessarily have to do everything exactly like everybody else, because your CRM is very editable. Your ERP is very editable. Your e-commerce site is very flexible. And so you need to be able to think about flowing data in a way that corresponds with that and not being trapped.
I think one of the things that I'd heard from one of our merchants, they actually came out of a culinary background, and they said a wonderful restaurant, the front of house looks perfect all the time. because you only get one shot with every diner that comes through the door. They'll give you more shots if you do really well that first time through. They're not going to come back if you give them substandard food or experience on that first time through. And he said, but the back of the house doesn't matter. He said the kitchen could be on fire, and often it is. But that front of house experience is one you can't possibly miss on. And what I've seen with a lot of merchants in this sort of data integration place is they wait till the smoke is starting to come out of the kitchen into the front of house and is really impacting the dining experience for that customer before they start looking at an integration solution to help standardize, streamline, make data live in a lot of cases is really helpful. And again, coming back to that background from both the e-commerce merchant side and then also from an agency perspective, we're working so hard to put our brands in front of every single customer. And that data really, if it's starting to impact your conversion rate, your customer experience, your advertising performance, it's already too late. And I really we've tried as we've matured to stress data streamlining, data integration as a more and more important part of marketing and customer experience. Again, I've worked with a lot of merchants doing 8 figures, 9 figures, who the kitchen is a mess. It's on fire all the time, and they're still managing to sort of somehow keep that front of house going, but it's just painful. And I think it really does, especially for those merchants who are starting to get into the 7, 8 figures per year, who are trying to make their way. They're not the giant brand yet. They're trying to, take up a little more market share, launch a new product. Those are the brands that they just can't afford to miss in this particular data integration place. In terms of sort of wins, like when you're talking about a win for a merchant, is there a way that you sort of take that pain? We talk about you can quantify pain and in terms of hours wasted, number of errors that make their way to production and make their way to a customer. How do you sort of measure the win? What's the outcome of a good iPass.com launch or good integration? How is that quantified? What does it look like to a merchant in terms of dollars and cents? What's that story?
So I'd say that my industry experience is that integrations come with an amount of pain, that there are fires that have to be put out. And so, Jordan, you tell me if you disagree, but that experience of a merchant that's calling up and saying, something's not working, I didn't break it, somebody go fix it. And next thing you know, you're bringing 4 teams together 2 weeks later to fight about who's responsible and ultimately who's going to fix it. And so you have this undertone of just trying to your analogy of the smoke coming out of the kitchen at the restaurant, of just trying to keep the baseline. And so I think that's the first area that you want to see that pain go away. I'm not going to say that there's not a merchant that has a rough launch with any integration platform, sometimes because there are edge cases that they haven't tested pre-launch. Just in general, that there's a lot of different, tweaks that can happen places, but you want to see them be able to get to that point of stability and be able to be proactive quickly. And that's really important. I would say that the metrics are going to be different from one merchant to another. I was on a call this morning with a subscriber to iPass.com who's getting ready to launch. It's a publicly traded company with $1 billion market cap, certainly on the larger scale of the merchants that we work with. We work with lots of great SMBs. And in their case, they're using what I'll consider a legacy ERP. It's not a system that we can get real-time inventory updates from.
Can we drop that in there?
They're on Microsoft Dynamics Nav.
Okay.
So they're planning an upgrade, and they conceptually iPass.com's ability to then swap ERPs later on without so they're using Akeneo as their product information management system, HubSpot as their CRM. Okay. They're actually moving from Adobe Commerce to Shopware as their e-com. And so, and there'll be more software in the future for them. And, and so when we looked at something going on, that their biggest issue this morning was really thinking about inventory updates. They go through a large volume of inventory. And to something you said earlier in the recording, that sometimes you have merchants that might upload a spreadsheet once a night. For them, their tolerance is updating inventory every 5 minutes.
Okay.
We can't, with many systems, we're able to do it in real time. You update in a system, and we use something called webhooks to listen for that, and we'll just immediately grab the data. In the case of Microsoft Dynamics Nav, we're checking every 5 minutes for inventory. But for them, the idea that they've got inventory and they're not offering it to shoppers, or they've sold it in another channel and they're still offering it and they're going to oversell, that in both directions, that would not work for them and for their customer success and for their success as a business. And so you do have different metrics that become important or more important to different people. And so whether it's the inventory, the product prices, just the products themselves, that there are new SKUs all the time and you need to make sure those are going out to all the sales channels, whether that's the efficiency of the order fulfillment, or the moving the customer data around where it needs to go, that there's so many different areas that we run into. Everyone's got different pain points based upon where is the volume of what they're dealing with.
Yeah. One of the comments that I'd seen as I was looking at iPass.com and just talking with some of our team members about iPass.com was there, I think, a surprising feature of using a solution like yours is how it actually helps flush bad data out of the system progressively. Which is kind of an interesting comment, because a lot of times when we think about a data transformation or an integration project, we just assume bad data in, bad data out. But with a great solution like iPass.com, that ability to have that transformation in the middle, the control that says, I'm not allowing, there's sort of a gatekeeper function. It really does allow for that cleanup to happen progressively. And that's really been a big issue for Coalition when we're working with a merchant and they're not willing to make that commitment to a more robust solution, because you spend all of your time just swatting at a fly, and the fly never goes away. And so I did want to call that out, because I think for brands that are listening to this conversation, there sometimes is this thought, well, I've got to get all of my ducks in a row. I've got to get everything sort of cleaned up and perfected on its own side. And sometimes that connector piece is actually what you need to make that happen. I was shopping with a large home improvement site yesterday. I needed a new ceiling fan. And I was sort of chuckling in advance of our conversation, because the filters on their site told me, as someone who knows e-commerce, that they aren't doing a very good job of that data standardization before it hits their e-commerce site. They're bringing in a lot of different brands. Those brands are probably each feeding their data in independently into probably the ERP or some other solution. And then that ERP is just pushing it right to the front end of the site. And somebody isn't looking at that, because for fans, I was trying to find the length of the fan blade, and I've got in inches, I've got inches spelled out, I've got the size of the box, I've got all sorts of other things that are, and my filter list is 65 things long. It's not helpful. It's not really well organized. I think there was maybe like a popularity algorithm, but it just, when you're looking for something specific, it was a big pain. I think, again, coming back to that comment, when you have that good piece in the middle, like an iPass.com, it really does help to clean up and to you begin to see good data hitting the front of your store, which means that when it comes back in as an order, you've got good data coming back. And all of a sudden, your order record begins to clean up. Your customer record begins to clean up. And all of a sudden, it's a couple months down the line, you're in a much better spot, even if you didn't have some big overhaul of your ERP data or systems. Do you find that like that's a sort of an unspoken benefit, perhaps, or maybe a very obviously spoken benefit for working with an iPass.com?
I think that we tackle it in multiple ways. And so, as an example, we recommend best practices that are going to, for instance, get your product data from whatever source of truth down to your e-commerce website And so when orders are coming back, there's no problems of SKUs mismatching and order line items getting stuck. And so by making sure that everything is stitched together end to end, you're cutting down on those issues, and you shouldn't be manually entering your product in your e-commerce website and worrying about, are they going to match up with whatever systems you're fulfilling in and so forth. That it should all be flowing in a more natural way. You know, our founder and CEO, Joe Duke, loves to talk about accountability of data because he's been doing this for 25 years. And, you know, the team created iPass.com after beating their heads against the wall for long enough with what was out there and running into these same problems over and over again. Our system in particular, when it receives a piece of data, it's going through that translation and transformation stage where it's being validated. And so if there was something wrong with that data on the way in, it's going to automatically retry on a schedule. It's not lost, and you're going to get notified. Then it's going to go to all the receiving systems, and it's going to translate to what those systems need. So maybe in one system you've got first name, and another you've got given name, and there are different parameters around what you can and can't have. And so we're going to translate and send. And if it gets stuck on the way out to one of those systems, the same thing is going to happen. It's going to go to a queue where it retries on a schedule, and it's going to notify you that this is stuck.
Yep.
And so you've got checks and balances. And in that way, you're finding what's not flowing, and you're not just, oh, those products never made it to the store and we haven't been selling them all month and nobody knew, or those orders didn't get fulfilled, or whatever other inevitabilities, those users didn't wind up on the marketing list and we've ignored them, all of these possibilities. So we find that that's important. But if I go even maybe another level with it, when you think about that data stitching together and that process, you're getting the data from an origin that, to your point, may not have everything in a healthy state, and being able to visualize what's going on through a low code platform, see what's happening. Think about when you're turning on a new piece of software, seeding the data in through this system, clean data in a healthy way. Having all of this happen in a more proactive, planned, measured, standardized approach, it all leads to better long-term outcomes. And so I'm not going to say that somebody's not going to have to spend some time cleaning up some data, but our system has ways, for instance, of translating different data just in the flow, so that if we do hit certain things, will translate to whatever it should be. So, you know, if there are products coming from different manufacturers or different brands or what have you, different distributors, great. You know, how do those need to be translated? And maybe you do that in your product information management system. Maybe some of it's happening in the iPass.com layer, but we can help you to bring that all together in a way where it's going to work.
Yeah. Good. So a couple of questions just about iPass.com. So kind of asking for like a merchant perspective, do I have, with iPass.com, am I only able to work with pre-built integrations or pre-built third parties? I mean, do I have to see that all of my vendors are already on your list? Or is there some means to bring in something you've never heard of before?
No, so that's a great question. We have integrations in our marketplace, as you hit on, that already have data flows and already have fields mapped. And so when I'm thinking about a popular e-commerce platform, we'll already have, you know, if I'm thinking product data, the product name, description, SKU, price, inventory, those kind of fields already mapped. And you can map your custom product attributes. If you're selling cell phones, you know, what size does that cell phone come in? What carriers does it work with? How many gigabytes? Those sorts of things. You can map those fields.
Okay.
We've got a partner network, which includes Coalition, that, you know, includes partners that are happy to work with our Open SDK, our software development kit. And so aside from using what's already in our marketplace and leveraging our open APIs and our flat file support, partners can write, and end users potentially can write integrations using our SDK. And so if they have 6 pieces of software that they need to integrate, and there are 5 in our marketplace, well, they have 1 to add. But by adding that 1, that one piece of software can now talk with the other 5.
Right.
It's normalizing, it's making it universal, and it's bringing all of the error handling and all these other positive features into the mix. And so you're not limited by it. There's certainly additional expense if it's not in the marketplace, but I'll also say that we're always adding to our marketplace ourselves. And so we're always interested to hear in those situations what people are looking for and to see if it's something that's in our roadmap, if it's something that our team would be able to provide, or weigh in on what's the best methodology to get that particular software integrated with our platform.
For one of our listeners, if they were just sort of hearing you talk about iPass.com and they're wondering if they're the right customer for you, what are the 3 or 4 things that if you're in conversation and you hear light bulb 1, light bulb 2, light bulb 3, light bulb 4, hearing light bulbs is kind of an interesting idea, but maybe you see light bulbs going off in the course of that conversation, what are sort of 4 things where you would say this is absolutely the situation where they should be hitting that contact form on the iPass.com site as quickly as possible, because you're absolutely sure that this is going to be a time saving, a money saving, a customer experience improving sort of outcome? What would those be if you could kind of pin them down?
Absolutely. So firstly, if you're getting a new piece of technology in your stack, a new ERP, point of sale, CRM, PIM, ecom, now you need to deal with integration. From where I sit, I think it absolutely makes sense to look at what the next generation of integration technology looks like and how it operates, and to compare and contrast and see what the total cost of ownership savings would be, and see what kind of visibility and control that you'd have in a platform like iPass.com. I've been in this space a long time. I've worked at a different integration platform years ago. I haven't seen anything else like it.
Cool.
I think it's absolutely worth it in that situation. I would say when you're in that situation, when you either back to that earlier analogy where the smoke is coming out of the kitchen, where the integrations are a pain point, when the price of maintaining those integrations just keeps going up and you're bleeding money, when you feel stifled and you can't integrate or you can't get new software because integration is the blocker, is the pain point, I think those are the times when you're going to be looking at an iPass.com, and you should absolutely know what's out there and what's available to you.
Typical client profile for iPass.com. I mean, is this a retailer? You've touched on manufacturers, distributors. What sort of a usual customer look like for iPass.com? Size of business, perhaps, international, local, to the United States. Kind of give us that sort of overview.
Yeah, I'd say that we're a company that was created and that's operated out of the United States. So the majority of our customers are here in the U.S., but we have partners on, I think, at this point, every continent other than Antarctica.
Why not? Why nothing there?
I've been trying, but the penguins, they just don't respond to my emails.
They just want sardines. That's it. Just get with the sardines.
That's it. Just sardines. So, I'm going to get some mail on that comment. I'm waiting to see. Not from the guys in the tuxedos.
No.
So, there are opportunities, and we've got, including, partners reselling and what have you in different regions. We can host data in different regions of the world. So I would then think to the size of the merchant. And typically we're dealing with organizations that are into the millions of dollars in revenue and up. And so there is a pretty wide berth there. We provide flat monthly rates for our platform. It's a software as a service. It's a SaaS platform. And so it is economical when you get to that point of needing this kind of software integrated. Our entry-level plan is $500 a month and allows you to integrate 3 pieces of software. So at that point, that's where a lot of users will start, and they'll be able to grow there without paying for API calls or bandwidth or storage or some other metered metric that they're going to be, their eyes are going to be watering at the end of the month when they see the bill.
There still is
With
a
us,
bleed
it's
happening.
predictable.
Yeah.
Right. And I think at that point, it's important to find a team like Coalition that's going to be able to guide through the process and help with that implementation and user acceptance testing and go through that portion of the process that the average merchant doesn't necessarily have the time and wherewithal to put together a project plan and push for all the right answers to the right questions at the beginning of the project, to understand everything that needs to happen to launch successfully, to test different order statuses and different product types and different, so on and so forth, product attributes and all these unique things that are not insurmountable. They're very surmountable, but you want a team that can walk you through that project successfully and be there for you. So for me, that's a good look at, who, what, when, where, why, how, between the last few questions. It's really, really about, a merchant that has gotten to that point where they're growing and they want the integration pain to stop and they want something more proactive.
Yeah. Now, maybe kind of turning to everybody's favorite topic as we close up our time together today, looking at AI. How do you view AI internally with iPass? Is there AI features that are being built and integrated? Do you feel like AI is in some ways a competitor to what you're doing? And then I think, again, one of the things that we're doing a lot with in terms of testing and study is sort of an emerging opportunity, is that agentic AI experience. How is iPass sort of preparing or prepared for that future state?
So first and foremost, AI is living and dying by data. And so AI, more than maybe any other system that we've talked about in this conversation, is going to need all the right data coming from all the right systems. iPass.com is great at helping you to make that happen. Sometimes you may have a standalone solution that you're really using first and foremost for AI, but often it may be getting the right data into a system like a PIM you have 100,000 products or 1 million products. You can't write that many product descriptions yourself and do it well. You can't create all the right categorization and tagging and do it well. The AI can do it in a system like PIMcore or Kenio. Recommend, you can approve and move on and have better outcomes in people finding the right products and falling in love with them on your website. I'd say the same for systems like marketing and CRM, that having the right data will allow those systems to send the right messages to the right shoppers through the right, communication channels at the right times. And so there are different cases where we're getting data to different systems so that the AI can be leveraged. And we find that that's important. We're adding some AI into our platform itself to help improve when you want to transform data in unique ways, and something that a developer could write a script for. Well, let the AI take a stab at that for you and speed up that process. But the other area that you asked about is how do we see AI as competitive with us? And someone asked me recently, or actually maybe stated to me recently, that they thought that ERPs were going to become extinct in a few years because it was just going to be AI. And my response to that is no, that, you're still going to get audited, and the database is still sacrosanct there for the accounting team. And so that doesn't go away. Now, all the reporting that you're generating may be more agentic, that, you may be the front end may be different, that you may be querying in a different way and asking the AI questions so that it can go grab that data and report back and so forth. But the platform itself doesn't go away. And so where I see iPass.com in that same lens is that you have a lot of software. The software needs to communicate. If you try to deal with this one-off, if you just ask the AI to write connectors between systems, what you're going to see today is, a bunch of custom code that you can't manage, you can't maintain in a healthy way. When something goes wrong, good luck. And that's not really a way to scale. That you do, multiply that by how many connectors you would need it to write, and you're just sitting on pain in terms of things not working the way that you want and not knowing where to turn to address it. And so with iPass.com, you have that grand central station for data flowing and visibility and control over all of that data. And so will our platform evolve with AI? Will there be changes? Absolutely. But I think that we become more important, not less important, that trying to just let the AI write it. I've seen people doing it. There are cases when you can, plug in a piece of software, let's say into your website, having the AI do that as kind of a one-off, perhaps, and maybe it's going to work. But trying to get all this sensitive data moving in real time that way, just through a bunch of what I would think of as spaghetti code, that's not a healthy business operation. That's not necessarily going to check the right boxes in terms of security, scalability, reliability, all the things that we do as a mock platform with our SOC 2 and other certifications and so on and so forth. We're auto scaling, and we're dealing with all of these inevitabilities that are very, very important to, back to that earlier phrase of accountability of data.
Yeah, I love that AI is data dependent, right? You called that out early, and I think that's such a really important truth. And it's a place where paying more attention to how you're handling, passing, communicating, standardizing, transforming data right now is going to be really helpful within the next 6 months as we see more people shopping through a ChatGPT or a Gemini or a Claude type of experience, and not through your e-commerce site, because they're going to grab that data from someplace, and you want to make sure that that's clean and ready to be merchandised by AI. A couple of quick thoughts too, I think, on that topic. I heard one of our other partners called out. They said the interface doesn't go away because people don't prompt the same way. He said the reality is that prompting becomes extraordinarily personal way of working with a software. But it's so different that when you're trying to train a large team, an organization, on how to navigate and do certain things in a repetitive way, you really can't just rely on prompt. And so you need systems that still have predictable interfaces that you can train someone on, because those prompts are always going to be a little bit different per person. So really excited for our conversation today. I know we've got a free integration and free integration audit that we're going to be putting out there as an offer for anybody listening who is in that spot. You've maybe hodgepodged, vibe coded, or working with another vendor in the data integration space, and are in that process of trying to find something that is streamlined, it is scalable, especially, and is ready for that next step in your tech journey. Coalition and iPass would love to be able to put together that audit for you. Robert, thank you so much for your time today, and really look forward to speaking with you more in the future on CyberSalve, our podcast about how to solve digital pain points that are commonly occurring. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.